of the Department of Justice, and Attorney Giran.
And that nobody be left untouched, or nobody will become a sacred cow that will not be touched uh, because of reasons unknown to us. So, given that, we are here to really know the direction that the DOJ has been taking, because I know it is of public knowledge that the DOJ has filed its first series of cases. But there has been an outcry from the public about the cases filed and the persons accused of what violations, because the list doesn't seem to be complete. So we are of the opinion that, or we are of the notion that probably a consultation with each other would be perfectly correct at this time, so that we will know what direction to take as a committee if the DOJ's direction will not coincide with the direction that we in the committee wish to take. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield to you.
Maraming salamat, Honorable Remulla. Honorable Barsaga, would you like to give a few words?
Well, unang-una, nasa news that my wife happens to be a COVID positive. On my part, I was tested last Sunday in Congress kasi kasama ako sa delegation na pupunta sa ating Pangulo. The result was negative. And yesterday, I also subjected myself to another test at ang resulta naman ay negative. I am a responsible public official, and therefore you can rest assured that I will not be going out of the house in order to risk the health and safety of our constituents. So you will be having peace of mind right now, although I am physically present. Sa ating namang sa ating namang mga resource persons, Yusek Sugay and Philhealth President, I would prepare to hear their statements before I make the necessary clarifications. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Honorable Barsaga. Napatingin sa iyo bigla si Yusek Sugay nung nagsabi ka na nag-positive. But at any rate, Comsec, before we proceed, can you please recognize our members in Zoom and also the Philhealth officials that are with us in Zoom? Maraming salamat po. Comsec?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, from the Committee on Public Accounts, we have the Honorable Robert A. Barbers and the Honorable Apple Pancho and the Honorable Emery Wano Dizon.
We would also like to recognize the following members. We have Deputy Majority Leader Bernadette Herrera D. We also have Deputy Majority Leader Ria Farinas, Representative Stella Kimbo, Representative Edgar Chato, and present in Nograles, as mentioned by the chairperson, we have our vice chairperson for the Committee on Good Government, Jesus Crispin Remulla, and Representative Elpidio Barsaga.
And Your Honor, from Philhealth, we have President Dante Gueran and I'm sorry, uh, Senior Vice President Vita Aragona.
Thank you, Attorney Francis. Is that all? Maraming po
Yes, sir.
salamat sa ating mga kasama. Before we proceed with the indulgence of the members of the joint committees, pwede po siguro natin pagpresenta muna si Department of Justice Task Force, PhilHealth, Yusek Adrian Sugay. Yusek, you're recognized. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ano lang ho, no? Initially, maybe just by way of update lang po, no? That's yun po ibibigay namin ngayon. Of course, we all know that we've already submitted the task force headed by Secretary Guevara has already submitted yung report po namin to the
Sir,
President.
may pang coffee?
But right now, what remains for the DOJ to do is to pursue yung mga criminal complaints, no, against yung mga PhilHealth officials, no. Initially, we are, in fact, my office is in fact finishing the complaint dun po sa interim reimbursement mechanism, ano. Ang directive po sa akin ni Secretary is to make sure that it's filed within the week, so I have until tomorrow, no, to finish it, no. So initially, siguro without meaning to telegraph our punches, so to speak, at this point, ano, bago namin ilabas, no. But initially, ang nakita po namin talaga is with regard to the implementation of the IRM, which although has been implemented in several instances prior to dito po sa state of emergency in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic, we found that previously the application or the implementation of the IRM was very limited. The parameters were very clear. Tsaka ho, the period was really fixed. I think in this case, initially what we have found is that in the implementation of the IRM with regard to COVID-19 and the pandemic, medyo marami kami nakitang issues, no? I think the parameters were stretched a bit too much. Maybe many of them went beyond the parameters clearly set by precedents with regard to the implementation of the IRM, as well as the implementing rules and regulations or the circulars which have been in place with regard to the IRM, as well as the other yung special privileges po na nandoon sa PhilHealth circular, which are made available to healthcare institutions in times of in times of pandemic, or if there's a calamity, there's a fortuitous event. So the parameters are very clear. What we have found so far is that hindi po nasunod itong parameters na to. And we hope to finish the complaint within the week. So with regard to the IRM, we're almost wrapping up with regard to the complaint. Yung pagdating po doon sa information technology issues, we're also wrapping it up. Siguro ho, pagkatapos ng IRM, we will finish yung investigation so doon sa IT. One of our undersecretaries who's a procurement expert, no, is looking into this very carefully kung ano ho yung hindi nasundan initially with regard to yung procurement process, ano. And also kasi doon din naman ho makikita talaga no, pag hindi nasundan yung procurement process, alam niyo naman merong nagkaroon ng hindi maayos na maybe with regard to suppliers or preference to certain suppliers or yung mga ganun, ano. So these are matters that will be looked into pagdating ho dyan sa information technology concerns, and we're also preparing the complaint for that. And also, Mr. Chair, meron po kaming dalawang composite teams which will continue to look into yung Philhealth and its affairs, not just with regard to IRM and IT, but also particularly with regard to the other legal concerns, with regard to the complaints or the cases which have never been followed up or which have never been filed. Ito po, I think this will take a few more weeks kasi medyo malalim ho ito, no? Libo ho ito mga complaints na ito or yung mga claims, mga denied claims or hindi na na-pursue. And there's also going to be a need to go into yung some of the documentation with regard to the regional offices. Kami we're very we're very fortunate no to have yung aming former NBI director as the new CEO ho ng PhilHealth, and we have in fact already spoken and we have been working together, so it's easier for us to gain access to many of the documents within PhilHealth, no? Which previously, I think even yung ibang mga committees nahirapang kunin yung mga documents na yun. So we have been in constant touch. Ako personally, as the undersecretary in supervising the National Bureau of Investigation, I work very closely with si Director Giran for mga 2 years. So I would like to um, assure the committees po, Mr. Chair, the other chair po, na we will continue to work very closely with them. So kung meron pa po, I understand we've discussed previously through Zoom meetings po, no, that there are other matters which the House and the committees wish to pursue. Um, Kami we are open pag kung meron po kayong mga gustong kaso na i-pursue or i-file, pwede niyo pong i-turn over sa amin like we have undertaken in previous Zoom meetings. And we also would like to express our readiness to work with the House with regard to pursuing these complaints, both criminal and administrative, against PhilHealth officials. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat po.
Before we start the interpretation, factual lang po, Yusek Sugay. So, di ba ho nag-file na kayo ng case? Cases. Ano po yung mga cases na yun?
Wala pa po actually hindi pa no. We are
wala.
in the process no. We were given yung task force po was given 30 days to complete yung report no. And the understanding with the president is that after the report we will start filing those cases. Ang dapat ang timeline namin is about 30 days after that report no. So we're now in our second week, more or less, second and third week. So I would like to think we are on track naman ho.
Marami po salamat kasi yun nga po yung pinapoint out ni Congressman Remulla kanina because there was an announcement of the filing of cases at sinabi na nga yung mga supposed individuals involved. But we're happy to hear na wala pa ho, and I hope, yes, we have a committee report. It's actually it's actually drafted already. Pwede na po namin itong isubmit sa inyo at mapag-usapan. Pero at least yung sa inputs po ninyo, you're looking into 2 issues or 3, yung IRM, yung IT process, and pending cases on legal. We have probably 4 more points to be added to this na palagay po namin makakatulong sa isinasagawa niyong investigasyon. And tama rin naman po na hindi naman madaliin kasi itong mga kasong to, Yusek Sugay, kailangan natin hindi lang yung basta sinabi na kapag file kayo, but it has to be a solid case, talagang matibay yung kaso natin kasi pagka hindi naman din, wala din pong ibig sabihin. Baka pa nga magalit ang publiko pagka nagkaroon lang ng mga dismissal dahil hindi natin nagawa yung tamang preparasyon. So we thank you for that. Anyway, I'd like to open the floor for interpellation. Honorable Remulla, would like to begin. Maraming salamat.
Yes, the first point that I would like to ask the DOJ is that if they have made any studies on the fraud, the fraud mechanisms within Philhealth and the people responsible for the fraud mechanisms. Can you please apprise us on the DOJ studies on this matter?
Mr. Chair, I understand initially meron hong mga findings no with regard to this mechanisms, and it's contained in the report but we are also looking more closely into these mechanisms kasi nga ho, as you will know, yung initial report, we were given 30 days to do that report. And in fact, even during our initial meetings with the committee, I think it was made very clear that it will really take some time to get into these fraud mechanisms, to understand yung workings ng Philhealth, no? Although merong mga issues that have stood out, like for instance with regard to IRM and the IT, pagdating po doon sa inner workings ng Philhealth, talagang it will take a few more weeks of study, no? At the same time, I think it should also be pointed out, as we have been finding out as we look into the IRM issue, that actually ang tingin po namin yung IRM, if you look at it very carefully, doon yung makikita kung ano yung mechanism, how they do it, no? Oo. Pati yung setup po, no, sa PhilHealth, so if you will see kung ano talagang doon yung nakikita from end to end, kung ano yung nangyari, no, from policy to rule to implementation hanggang doon ho sa regional, down to yung ating mga healthcare institutions or yung mga healthcare professionals, so end to end. So doon ho nakikita na, no. And I would like to think and I would like to assure the committee na pag nakita niyo po yung complaint, lalabas naman po dun yun. Kung ano yung, sabi nga ko, ano yung kanilang modus, no?
Aware ba yung DOJ sa amount that was supposed to be involved in PhilHealth, yung kailangan pera para bayaran ng PhilHealth ang COVID cases at magkano ang dinispense? Kasi you're talking about the IRM and the total amount dispensed has been 16 billion. But in our committee hearings, it was pointed out in our mathematical model devised by Congresswoman Kimbo that the real cost of COVID will only be 3.3 billion. 3 billion lang, di ba? 3.3 billion. Maximum 5 billion ang cost ng COVID. But in IRM, they dispensed more than 15 billion already. And given that, something already should smell by now, because they were ordered, they said that they were releasing money for COVID, and they have dispensed 12 billion more than necessary to keep COVID in check. And probably the other resulting fraud because of this, the IRM, is that many hospitals declared even non-COVID cases as COVID, so PhilHealth will pay. Di ba? Para magbabayad ng PhilHealth kahit hindi dapat bayaran ng PhilHealth. Sabihin natin, namatay na sakit sa puso, dideclare nilang COVID. Namatay sa multiple organ failure, dideclare nilang COVID. Tapos binayaran ng binayaran, ito ba na-imbestigahan na rin? Did you look at this case already? Kasi nga, the fraud became instantaneous and naging obvious pa yan eh. Kasi the word was in the hospitals, i-declare na lang COVID yan pag namatay para babayaran na lang ng PhilHealth yan. Pag ganyan ang attitude, Yusek Sugay, then we know that PhilHealth was very lax in allowing, I mean, in advance mo na sa hospital yung pera, hindi naman pang COVID lumalabas. Tapos lahat na lang sasakupin ng COVID kahit hindi ganun kamahal. Baka mabangkarote yung gobyerno natin sa kakasagot ng COVID dahil ayun ang maximum amount possible. Kasi example na rin ng upcasing yan, example na rin ng fraud talaga. Fraud mechanism talaga. The same way that from the cataract, kasi ang first na lumalabas kasi na fraud, na large scale, na organized, is cataract. Hanggang ngayon, parang kaunti lang ang nasuspinde at wala talaga na parusahan. Tapos nagtuloy-tuloy na, lahat na. From cataract, lumabas na pati yung kay Dr. Mengita, di ba? Nakita nyo naman yon, cerebral problems, stroke problems, lahat na, nagkaroon na ng iba-ibang branching out. Lumala na lumala. Tapos, hindi lang yan. pneumonia, gano'n na rin. Kaya yung COVID ngayon, ito talaga ang talagang sinasabi sa atin, grabe na yung nangyayari. Di ba? Dito na lang kasi nagsimula nga sa katarak yung palaki ng palaki, pagdating sa COVID, lahat yan COVID na. Kasi ang sinabi ng Philhealth, walang limit sa umpisa Walang limit ang gastos sa COVID. Di ba? Kaya meron tayong cases. Okay naman yon. Marami naman tinulungan ng Philhealth. May mga taong nag-survive sa COVID, 7 milyon, 8 milyon. May kilala ko ganun mga 7 milyon ang bill niya sa St. Luke's. Pero ito talagang COVID yon. Pero ang pinakamasakit dito, pati hindi COVID, ginagawang COVID ng mga ospital. Have you seen that? Have you checked into that?
Mr. Chair, tinitignan po yan. That is one of the things na iniisa-isa ho yan. Kasi titignan natin per case po yan. No? Although kasi kung titignan nyo po, and this we have seen, yun nga yung sinasabi namin kanina, na ang linaw ng parameters ng IRM, pero nakikita ninyo parang hindi sinunod. No? So, yun nga yung sinasabi nga, nakita ho namin yung initial na study ho ni Congressman Kimbo, no? Stella Kimbo. Kung tinignan nyo ho kasi talaga, kung susundin nyo ng gusto yung parameters, hindi dapat ganun kalaki ang kailangan. No? Kasi there may have been some hospitals, for instance, or some healthcare institutions na hindi naman dapat naka-avail ng IRM. No? Hindi dapat entitled. So, yun yung lumalabas. And I'm not even going into yung mga issue po ng mga dialysis centers at mga kung ano, na hindi naman talaga dapat nakakuha. Kasi I understand, ang initial na talagang outlay nila para dito, 27 billion ho. Hindi ba yun ang alam kong program, no? So, tama ho, kasi kung sa pag-aaral ho namin, kung titignan ninyo, kung talagang gagamitin natin ng tama yung IRM, yung mekanismo na yun, hindi kailangan ganun kalaki. Kasi marami yung healthcare institutions na hindi naman dapat siguro nakakuha or should not have been entitled in the first place. We found, for instance, certain hospitals na iisa lang naman yung kaso ng COVID pero ang laki nung nakuhang IRM. Bakit ganun? Hindi ba? Isa pa ho yan, yung sinasabi ho nyo na yung upcasing, no? Fraudulent upcasing. No? Tinitingnan na rin ho namin yan. But yan ho, pag-aaralan pa yan. Kung masasama namin dito sa complaint ngayon yan, titignan pa ho namin. Pero malinaw ho na hindi nila sinunod. And I think this has always been yung modus ho nila. No? Hindi nila sinusunod yung parameters nila. Maluwag sila.
Probably, yung Sugay, I don't want to generalize. No? Pero probably, tingnan nyo lahat ng ospital na bago. Private hospitals na bago. Hanapin nyo lagi, may Philhealth sa labas. Kasi ang usap-usapan dyan ng mga doktor, pag meron kang Philhealth, may pang-overhead ka na. So kasama sa kanilang overhead, sa kanilang programa para ma-meet nila overhead, singilin sa Philhealth ang lahat. So basically, doon pa lang alam mo na may problema na Kasi ang daming bagong ospital, ang negosyo talaga, kumuha ng Philhealth collection. I mean, dapat doon pa lang yung attitude nyo, dapat ganun Kasi, unang-una, walang maniwala na may corruption ang mga doktor Walang maniwala na corrupt ang mga doktor o may doktor na kriminal. Walang maniwala na ang ospital pwedeng gumawa ng masama. Pero ito lang, bigyan ko kayo ng example. No? Perpetual sucor. Pag-aari ng mga madre sa Cebu. Di ba? Ano ang ginawa nila? Yung isang kaso na hindi makabayad, nasa court record yan dinetain nila yung pasyente na 1 extra week. Anong ginawa ng ospital? Siningil nila sa Philhealth yung detention. Yung time na dapat di-release na, siningil nila sa Philhealth. There's a court case on that Ano nangyari? Hindi pinayagan ng Philhealth sa ilalim. Yung mga talagang fraud investigator ng Philhealth, nakita na yung pattern na ginagawa ng sukor. Pinagalitan ng sukor, nagkaroon ng desisyon, suspindihin ang sukor. Perpetual sukor sa Cebu. Anong nangyari? Nag-resist ng perpetual sukor, nag-file ng case sa RTC. Natalo ang perpetual sukor. Umakyat sa Court of Appeals, natalo ang perpetual sukor. Ibig sabihin, talagang mali yung ginawa nila. Dapat suspended sila ng 3 months. Ayun ang labanan That was the case. Kasi kung talagang naayos sa umpisa yan, naayos na dapat yan. Pero hindi, talagang nag-resist sila, lumaban sila, nung natalo sila, ano ginawa ng Philhealth Board? Finine lang sila. Ngayon, if this behavior of the Philhealth Board in allowing Perpetual Sucor to just pay a 200,000 peso fine is criminal. Kasi it sends a signal sa lahat ng mga corrupt na mga ospital na private, even probably some public ones, na wala namang mangyayari sa'yo pag giniloko mo ang Philhealth. Wala mangyayari sa'yo pag ginago mo ang Philhealth. Wala mangyayari sa'yo pag nagnakaw ka sa taong bayan. That's the signal you're sending. If the whole Philhealth Board has to suffer, so be it. Pero just to let them get away with a slap on the wrist for something that cost the government so much to fight a case, for Philhealth to fight a case in court, and then for the board to just let it go, that's criminal. I will not accept no less than a case against them. I will not accept no less than a case against them. If you do not file a case against them, I will bring you to the ombudsman. It is not bad. If you don't find that criminal, I don't know what's criminal. That's toleration of fraud. You don't accept the example, you allow insurance fraud to prosper. I don't know. Pero anong pag-asa ng bansa natin kung pababayaan natin lahat ng taong ganito? Healthcare system natin. I-abolish natin ang Philhealth. Ano papalit natin? Dahil may mga taong ganyan? Kasi walang takot. Kasi makakausap mong pala yung board. Pababayaan ka lang. Susulatan mo lang, mamamakaawa ka lang, dahil madre ka. Papabayaan ka lang. Basically, yun ang nangyari. Yung attitude ni Dr. Duque is let them go. Let them be. Kung ganyan ang attitude, ano mangyayari sa Pilipinas? Paano na lang ang taong bayan na laging tinatakot ng mga ospital pag hindi makabayad, tinatakot sila. Kinukuha ang titulo nila. Di ba? Kaya naghihirap ang maraming Pilipino pag meron nagkakasakit sa pamilya. Pag nagkasala ang ospital, baliwala. Pag ang tao ang nagkasakit, kawawa. Hindi pwede yun. That should not be. Then this country will go nowhere. Kawawa naman tayo. We know the fondness of the president for Dr. Duque, but we have to save the president from that fondness if we have to. And the healthcare system. It's not about Dr. Duque, it's about the healthcare system.
Thank you, Honorable Remulla. Thank you, Yusek Sugay. I'd like to recognize Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, who's in Zoom. Congresswoman Kimbo. Congresswoman Kimbo, you're recognized. Narinig niyo po ba kami?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm happy that you're looking into the IRM. So, and nabanggit nyo nga po na mukhang they went beyond the parameters, which is very consistent naman po with the findings of the TWG. So, malinaw naman po dun sa IRM that the purpose for that is really for rebuilding. Kaya nga po yan ang ginamit for Yolanda. Ang tingin ko kasi dito, wala naman pong destruction na nangyari sa ating healthcare system. So una sa lahat, the question in my mind was, applicable ba ang IRM dito sa COVID situation? Again, because walang nangyaring destruction sa healthcare system. So that's number one. No? And so walang pagkasira, pero ginamit pa rin ang IRM. And di ba ang purpose nga ng IRM is if front load mo yung pera, and big amounts are needed because nga precisely kailangan yan kapag nasira ang mga ospital, ang mga clinics. And again, ginamit ito for COVID, pero ang application na nangyari is also for non-COVID. And in fact, in many hospitals, mas maraming ang pera ang ginamit para sa non-COVID compared to COVID. In fact, I think there were about 4 or 5 hospitals na halos 100% nga yung iba eh. 100% ang nakuha nila from the IRM ay ginamit nila entirely for non-COVID cases. So I'm happy, Yusek Sugay, that you're looking into this. So yun ang unang manifestation ko. But my real question really is, ano ba ang pwedeng gawin sa case payments? No? So nabanggit niyo yung 3 cases na titignan ninyo, which is IRM and IT and then unfiled cases. Pero pag-iisipin naman natin, there are 2 things in my mind na kailangan talagang tignan eh. One is yung misuse ng isang case payment system. Na sa totoo lang, in theory, maganda sana ang case payment for purposes of cost containment pagdating sa insurance companies. Kaya lang, hindi siya nagamit ng tama in the case of Philhealth. Kaya nagkaroon nga ng yung tinatawag na collusive behavior. At sa ngayon, so lagi natin nababanggit yan. May collusion, may pagkokonsyaba na nangyayari between the hospital, halimbawa, between regional officers as well as officers po sa central office ng Philhealth. So ang tanong ko is, have you looked into the possibility of invoking the Philippine Competition Act? Kasi klaro sa batas na yan kung ano ang penalties ng collusive behavior. And klaro din sa batas na yan na sakop po ang GOCCs. And as we know, PhilHealth is a GOCC. So pagdating sa collusive behavior, tinitignan dyan kapag nagkokonsyaba ang entities na ang resulta ay nagkakaroon halimbawa ng price fixing. So in my mind, yung misuse ng case payments na nagkakaroon ng upcasing, in my mind, it can be interpreted as tantamount to price fixing. So ang ending is they end up fixing the prices of healthcare at levels that are way higher than what they ought to be kung walang collusive behavior na nangyayari. So, yun po yung first question ko, Yusek Sugay. Natignan nyo na ba ang Section 14 under RA 10667, which is the Philippine Competition Act. And ito po ay patungkol po sa anti-competitive behavior. Kasama po dyan ang price fixing na dala po ng collusive behavior.
Yusek Sugay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Congresswoman Kimbo. Unahin ko ho yung doon sa yung collusive behavior and the possible violation ng Section 14 ng RA 10667. Thank you, Congresswoman Kimbo, for pointing this out. And in fact, we are looking into this. I think si Secretary Guevara, I think who used to be part also of the Philippine Competition Commission, together with si Congresswoman Kimbo, she's very well aware of this provision of the law, and we are in fact looking into it. Medyo lang ho, this will take a little more study, no? So tinitignan po namin ito, and we hope to pursue a complaint with regard to this, kasi nga ho lumalabas yan. It's not just with regard to IRM or what, yan ho yung, I think yan ho yung isa sa pinaka malaking fraud, to borrow the words ni Congressman Remulla kanina. It's one of the bigger fraud mechanisms doon sa PhilHealth, yung collusion, or that collusive behavior. So Congresswoman Kimbo, we're looking into it, and we will report in due course kung ano yung finding namin dyan to the House, And also going back dun sa IRM, yun nga ho yun, and in fact, ito ho yung aming pinaka-thesis dyan, that with regard to parameters, si PhilHealth ho, with regard to the IRM, fixed very well-defined parameters. That is, that aid will only be provided to healthcare institutions who wish to rebuild their healthcare systems critically damaged due to a fortuitous event, so that they may continue to provide healthcare services to Filipinos affected by the fortuitous event. Sa amin malinaw yun. Yun ho yung malinaw na parameters niyan. Ako rin ho, I remember in one of those hearings with yung aming resource persons dun sa task force. In fact, I personally asked one of the witnesses, sabi ko, bakit kayo nagpadala ng pera or bakit kayo nag-grant ng IRM with regard to a dialysis center? And I said very directly, what was critically damaged with regard to these dialysis centers? So yun yung tanong no? Kasi yung malinaw yun. And I think they stretched those parameters too far.
Ano ho
So,
naging sagot?
tinitingnan namin.
Give me one example of an answer to that question.
Ang
Please.
sagot ho nila dyan, may indirect damage daw or indirect effect dialysis center. So kaya nila. And they cited yung Philhealth circular with regard to this, which talks about direct and indirect effect. No? But if you read that particular portion of the circular very carefully, it only talks about, for instance, kunyari merong hospital ho, no, na nasira, na tinamaan ng bagyo, no. So may outpatient services yan. May direct, may patients who are directly affected by the calamity at merong indirect, no. Yun lang ho yun. Within, you talk about the same healthcare facility. We're not talking about another healthcare facility. So ang entitled lang mo sa IRM under those circumstances is the healthcare facility that was actually damaged, critically damaged. Hindi yun naman ibig sabihin niya na physically, critically damaged. It could also be kamukha ho dito sa pandemic, di ba? That certain hospitals, ang nangyari, talagang yung capacity was really stretched. No? That could also qualify as critical, being critically damaged to the extent that they might need aid from Philhealth in order to continuously provide healthcare services. Pwede ho yun. Pero maski ako personally, hindi ko maintindihan ano yung critical damage sa dialysis center. Hindi naman siya stretched. Hindi yun indirect effect. No? So yun ho yung mga tinitingnan namin. So Congresswoman Kimbo, we're looking into, again, just to summarize, with the matter of yung collusive behavior. And I think that should be really looked into because that is clearly a behavior that goes on in Philhealth and has been besetting Philhealth for many years already. We're looking into it po. And with regard to the IRM, ito ho yung mga bagay na tinitingnan namin. Yung kanilang paglagpas o yung hindi pagsunod dun sa parameters na malinaw na itinakda ng mga circulars which were issued by PhilHealth itself. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Salamat po, Mr. Chair, sa good news na shinare ni Yusek. And anyway, just to share the information, no, yung pong Section 14 or yung collusive behavior po among entities, yan po ang pinakamabigat na paglabag under RA 10667. In fact, ang penalty po dyan is a maximum of 100 million pesos at may kasama pong imprisonment dyan. So sa tingin ko, this is a good law to use para lang din po matakot na po yung mga may balak po na shenanigans dito po sa PhilHealth. And Yusek Sugay, I'm not sure if you know, may MOA na rin naman po between PCC as well as DOJ, mismong si Secretary Guevara nga po ang pumirma niyan. So talagang that should facilitate po coordination between the two agencies. And ang PCC naman po kasi, ang weakness po or kakulangan sa capacity is in terms of investigation. So in other words po, talagang maganda po na magsama po kayo, mag-join forces na po kayo. Anyway po, for my next question, have you looked into how decisions are made po sa PhilHealth? Kasi nga po, alam naman po natin na ang chairman of the board is the health secretary. But I don't know why, historically, parang pinapabayaan lang po ng DOH ang PhilHealth on matters that are very important. Katulad na lang po sa budget request. So tinanong ko kasi right now po, for 2021 po, ang budget request ng PhilHealth is 71 billion. And ang lumalabas is yung request na yan, sila lang ang nag-a-assess niyan. When in fact, the chairman of the board, which is the health secretary, should in fact know na and should participate in the process of determining a 71 billion budget request. So that's an example of big decisions that are financial in nature na parang it would appear na pinapabayaan lang ang PhilHealth. So, tatanong ko lang po, no, hindi ako abogado, so I'd like to know, sa ganyang sitwasyon, ano ba ang mga potential liabilities dyan? I mean, is that, in my mind, kasi it's a form of mismanagement, which resulted in a tremendous cost to government.
Yusek.
Oo. Mr. Chair, Congresswoman Kimbo, ano ho yan, makikita niyo ho yan kasi I suppose when you talk about yung ano bang tawag natin dyan, the decision making process, yung ano ho nila sa loob, ano, yung role ng board, yung role ng officers, ano. And I think this will be made very clear when we look into specific instances. So ano, like pagdating sa IRM, pagdating ho dyan sa kamukha yung the way the matter of yung IT was decided, ano, yung IT purchases, no, yung procurement, doon yung makikita kung paano yung takbo ng decision making. Kaya nga ho, normally when we talk about liabilities, criminal liabilities, meron ho yung kaakibat na administrative liabilities, ano. I think doon naman ho papasok yung with regard to the matter of how yung ating mga directors or officers performed yung kanilang functions, ano. Kasi kami, ang tingin namin dyan, and I think this is one of the major anchors, ano, nung aming IRM complaint is that alam naman ho natin lahat yan. Yung mga corporate officers, may fiduciary responsibility yan doon sa kumpanya. No? But in this case, mas malaki ho dahil GOCC yan. No? So, Congresswoman Kimbo, Mr. Chair, siguro doon siya papasok. Now, with regard to how it should be managed from here on in, I think this is a matter which may be better dealt with by yung atin hong bagong CEO, ano, si Director Geran. No? But yun lang ulitin ko, pag may criminal liability kadalasan sa gobyerno, alam natin lahat yan, may kaakibat ho yan na administrative liability. So doon pumapasok yun with regard to the way we perform our functions as government officials.
Di ba, ano, Yusek Sugay, pagka meron kang ginawang disadvantageous sa gobyerno, sigurado yan, tatamaan ka ng Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act, Republic Act 3019. Anything disadvantageous to government, pwede kang tirahin dyan, di ba?
And Yusek Sugay, anong role ng GCG dito? Kasi PhilHealth is a GOCC and mabigat nga yung isang provision dun sa GCG Act kasi annual ang renewals ng CEO. So ano pong, hindi ba may role din dito ang GCG? Hindi ba nila nakikita na meron ding management flow dito? So siguro yun ang follow-up question ko po kay Kong Boying po. I mean, no, it's a question for you, Yusek Sugay, pero sinusugan ko lang po yung tanong po ni Kong Boying.
Follow up on Kong Boy's question. Yeah,
Opo.
go ahead, Yusek Sugay.
Unahin ko lang ho yung kay Congressman Remulla. Totoo ho yun, ano? Basta disadvantageous and the law says grossly disadvantageous to the government. Ano ho yan sa RA 3019? Kasi recently nauso sa atin puro mga plunder no? Pero nung sinauna ho, RA 3019 palagi yan, yung Section 3E. Ano? Totoo ho yan. Actually, when you look at RA 3019, ang dami ho talagang pwedeng tamaan doon. Makikita nyo gaano kabigat yung responsibility ng mga tao sa gobyerno. Now, with regard to the GCG, ma'am, Mr. Chair, alam nyo, this is really something that they should be looking into. And ayaw naman namin nung pangunahan kung anong trabaho nila, kung paano nila ginagawa. But totoo ho yan, ano, Congresswoman Kimbo, Mr. Chair, I think dahil GOCC ang PhilHealth, dapat ho talaga, and I know for a fact that ito ho mga GOCC, in fact, they go through the usual training programs with the ICD, yung Institute of Corporate Directors, ganyan. Tapos they get renewed on a yearly basis, no? Yung ating mga kasama dyan, yung mga directors, yung ating mga CEOs. And I think this is something which may even the House may want to look into, no, with regard to the matter of yung supervision ho ng GCG with regard to these GOCCs. Kasi talagang ang dami nating GOCCs. At mabigat naman ho talaga yung trabaho ng GCG.
So, Mr. Chair, that was actually my last question for now. Gusto ko lang i-mention na first time ko pong makausap si Yusek Sugay and he instantly earned my trust. No? So, napakasinsero po niya and napakagaling po. So, good luck po sa gagawin natin. Napaka-importante po. Huwag niyo pong susukuan yan kasi tingnan niyo sa ngayon po, no, dahil po sa malaking problema dito sa Philhealth, ay umaabot na ang diskusyon sa pag-abolish ng isang social health insurance program na again, sususugan ko yung sinabi ni Kong Boying, ang epekto po niyan ay sa poverty. Dadagdag po, sa aking estimate po, kung ma-abolish po ang Philhealth nang dahil sa fraud na hindi na natin makontrol, dadagdag ang ating poor individuals na halos 20 million po. So ganun katindi ang epekto ng when you face very big hospital charges, anyone can become poor easily. So sana po pagtalungan natin ito and ako po ay may mahaba pong experience po sa research sa social health insurance. Anytime po you need help, let me know po. I will gladly help you. Thank you po, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Yusek Sugay.
Thank you, Honorable Kimbo. In fact, Yusek Sugay, many of the points on the IRM, yung mga violations were from the Honorable Kimbo. Yung pong yung regions tsaka yung mga yung mga nagki-claim upcasing cases, if I'm not mistaken, andito po sa aming report. So, thank you, Honorable Kimbo. With that, I now recognize the Honorable Barsaga.
Maraming salamat, Chairman. Napag-usapan yung case rate system. Of course, we know for a fact na meron tayong upcasing at meron din tayong padding ng mga statements of accounts and other related documents para tumaas ang billing ng isang healthcare facility. At ito nga yung tinatawag nating collusive behavior. On the other hand, in the course of our hearing, we were able to discover na yung case rate, there is no circular coming from Philhealth, there is no guideline na in case na mas mataas, na in case na mas mababa ang billing ng hospital kaysa sa case rate, ang dapat ibayad ay yung case rate kahit na mababa ang billing ng hospital. And that was admitted on record by Mr. Pragas. So sa madaling sabi, kung ang cost ng hospitalization is only 20,000 but the case rate is 30,000, ang ginagawa ng PhilHealth, and that is their practice, ang ibabayad nila yung 30,000. Unfortunately, there is no regulation, there is no law, there is no circular ng PhilHealth na bayaran nyo ng mas mataas. And it was admitted in the course of our investigation. At sana pagtunan din to ng pansin. Kasi kung sasabihin natin Republic Act 3019, automatically, they have caused injury to the government, they would be liable, at alam naman natin bilang abogado, Republic Act 3019 is a special law. It is a mala prohibita. There is no criminal intent necessary. As long as the law has been violated, they would be liable even though they invoke good faith. Yun ang consequence niyan. And perhaps it's about time na ayusin natin ang PhilHealth. Pangalawa, of course, alam natin yung mga board of directors ng PhilHealth under the existing laws, most of them are cabinet secretaries, which on my personal observation, wala na silang oras para pag-aralang mabuti ang policy at ang mga dapat gawin sa PhilHealth. Right now, there is a move either to abolish or reorganize PhilHealth. Sa pananaw ng Department of Justice, ano ba ang inyong magiging proposal in the event that we shall have a remedial legislation to address this issue?
Yusek Sugay.
Siguro, unang-una with regard to the matter of the upcasing, and I think, yung nabanggit kanina ni Congresswoman Kimbo rin yan, tingin ho namin from our understanding nung upcasing at yung kaso ho na ganyan, yung case rate system ang tawag ho, kung tinignan nyo, tama naman ho siya in principle, in yung konsepto niya, kasi it makes for an easier determination of yung kung magkano yung dapat ibayad, kumbaga parang naka-package na. Maybe it's just a matter, I suppose, of more regulations, or maybe fine-tuning it more, having more levels doon sa mga bawat rate, But I guess for purposes of siguro cost analysis or cost benefit, baka ho mas maganda siya talaga in the long run. Kailangan lang ho siguro talaga tignan siya ng mabuti. Paano siya, how it is being done in practice, Baka naman ho masyadong malawak yung ating mga rates, yung package rates. So I think that is something that needs to be looked into, and that's something that the new management ho ng Philhealth they might want to look into. Pagdating naman ho dyan sa kung ano ho yung tingin namin, alam nyo ho, I think siguro ho, ayoko naman pangunahan si Secretary tungkol dyan, at yung Kongreso kung anong dapat nilang gawin. But maybe siguro ho, but I think lumalabas naman ho yun doon sa report ng task force. Maybe we should really look at Philhealth more for what it really is. Unang-una, it really is an insurance enterprise. That's what it is. Kailangan ho talaga siyang patakbuhin that way. It has to be run by professionals that way, and we have to, I think lumalabas naman ho sa report yan ng task force, that we really kung DOJ lang ho masusunod, and I suppose also from the point of view ng mga abogado in general, dapat ho malinaw na yung mga nakaupo doon nakakaintindi kung ano ho yung ginagawa talaga.
Yusek, if I may cut you, mabilis lang po. Kasi binanggit niyo yung case rate system. Tama po yun eh. Dahil globally, ginagamit yung case rate system, global funding, fee for service, combination of which, ginagawa po yan sa iba't ibang bansa. Pero hindi po ba ninyo nakita dito sa PhilHealth na ginamit yung isang polisiya, case rate system, in this case, para maisagawa yung sindikato, yung modus operandi that we are talking about? Is this, kasi sa akin sa hearing na ginawa natin from 2013 to date, hanggang dito sa COVID, consistent yung ganitong kilos eh. At kaya po tama kayo, dapat lumalim pa at makasuhan talaga yung mga gumamit ng ganitong klaseng modus operandi.
Mr. Chair, makikita naman yung lalabas niya, kaya lang kailangan lang pag-aralan pa ng mas malalim. Tsaka ako, tingin ko, sa akin ng personal na pananaw, siguro, yun nga, kailangan tignan. Baka naman masyadong malawak yung ating bawat case rate eh. Baka kailangan mas masinsin, di ba?
Yun
minsan,
po, hindi kaya sinadya yun.
Baka ho, no?
Okay.
And I think that is something that should be looked into. Kasi
Yes.
minsan baka nandun ka sa pinakamababa na level nung particular case rate, no? But you're actually allowed, to charge yung todo, Kasi yun yung sistema ng case rate, no? So I think that should be looked into, at saka ho, mas importante, gawing mas masinsin bawat rate. Siguro ho, I don't know. I think that's...
Ang observation ko lamang, Yusek, doon sa case rate, kahit na mataas yung case rate sa actual billing, yun namang excess, hindi man napupunta sa pasyente eh. Pumupunta sa healthcare facilities and perhaps to doctors. As a matter of fact, based on our investigation, billions of pesos ang overpayment. And this is possible na mayroong overpayment although nagkaroon na ng upcasing, although nagkaroon na ng falsification ng documents. And that is my point. Ang point ko lamang, there is no legal basis na pag mataas ang case rate as compared to actual medical expenses, ang ibabayad ay yung case rate. There is no provision in the law, expressly or impliedly, or even in the circular of PhilHealth. And that was admitted. That is my only point.
Mr. Chairman, relevant to the discussion.
Yes, quick interjection.
Ito lang yung kasi yung napag-usapan na rin yung case rate, no? Kasi kagaya sa cataract, 16,000 per eye. So, halimbawa, yung isang mag-asawa o kaya isang worker na insured, ang dependent niya, parents niya. Ang isang tao, 16,000 per eye ang makatarak. So, ang napakataas niyan kasi ang lalabas diyan, kung 2 sets of eyes, 64,000 na kagad ang gastos ng gobyerno. Ang binayaran mong premium, 2,500. Pinag-usapan natin, you mentioned earlier about running it as an insurance company. Basta ganyan, talaga you run it to the ground. Kasi pag ganyan ang iyong case rate na ibibigay na napakataas, napaka-attractive na gawing industriya.
At
Na, diba? Ginawa na. Ginawa na industriya yan. No? Sa Pangasinan, meron dyan Fatima Hospital. Marami na gumawa nito eh. Kaya sinasabi nga natin, ito ang recommendation ng isang former Philhealth board member. Maybe you can ask him for his opinion. No? Dr. Jack Arroyo Jr. Maganda yung kanya sinulat dito eh. Sinasabi niya nga ibaba natin yung presyo to 10,000 or to 8,000 per eye. Kasi mababa na naman ang cost ng lens eh. Pero why are we charging it allowing this to be charged so high? Diba? Dapat ma-rationalize din ang case rate. If we will retain the case rate, is to be rationalized on the low end, not the high end.
Just another interjection.
You have the floor, the Honorable
Yes.
Barsaga.
In case of overpayment na pupunta sa ospital, kung sakasakali namang mababa ang case rate as compared to the actual expenses, yung pasyente naman sa private hospital ang nagbabayad ng difference. Yes. And in public hospital, kung ikaw naman ay Philhealth member at naging Philhealth member ka because you are an employee either in the public or private, kung mataas yung actual billing expenses mo, magbabayad ka rin ng difference. So we don't see the point. It is always to the damage and prejudice of the patient. Pag malaki ang billing niya, babayaran niya ang difference sa case rate. Pag maliit naman ang billing niya, as compared to the case rate, the government will pay the higher case rate na mapapupunta naman hindi sa pasyente, kundi sa ospital. So that is our point. Hindi na natin pinag-uusapan dito ang upcasing, pati na ang falsification ng mga statement of accounts and billing statements. Thank you for that information.
Thank you, Honorable Barsaga.
Yes.
Before you, Saksugay, would you like to react? Okay, so thank you. Before we proceed to the Honorable Barbers, can I recognize Attorney Dante Geran of Philhealth? Magandang umaga po, Attorney Dante. Pasensya na po kayo at medyo magulo po ang signal natin currently. But
Sir,
Attorney,
good morning po.
yes, morning
Sir,
Attorney.
good morning po. Good morning
Kamusta
po.
po kayo? Kamusta po yung inyong test sa COVID?
I will be having another round of test Saturday. Pero sa ngayon po sir, nasa bahay lang po ako, naka-quarantine. Pero I'll assure the Honorable Congressman Mike Defensor and the rest sa kongreso natin na I'm still working. I'm working and almost every day we're having meetings via Zoom. So nagtatrabaho ako sir kahit na nasa bahay. Thank you po.
Yes, totoo po yun. Para po dun sa mga nanonood sa atin. Actually, si Attorney Geran last week, gusto rin mag-committee hearing. Ang sabi ko, magpahinga muna at magpa-check up para ma-ascertain yung kaso niya dahil marami nag-positive doon sa Philhealth office. Anyway, Attorney Geran, ang question ko lang po, mabilis. Yung pong privatization, Attorney Geran, ano po ang stand nyo dyan? Narinig nyo na po yan galing sa ating Pangulo. Nakamute po, Attorney Geran, sorry. Okay na po, Attorney Geran? Wala pa rin po. Attorney Geran?
Hello? Hello?
Yan po.
Hello. We first and foremost, sir, we respect the wisdom of the president. But, kung i-privatize po ang Philhealth po, ano mangyari po sa ating mga miyembro? Kahit na nakita ko na in my just 2 weeks of stay here sa PhilHealth, meron na po akong nakitang ideya po. Now, pag i-privatize natin ito, saan pupunta itong mga miyembro natin? Na meron tayo sa PhilHealth, meron tayo tinatawag na outright membership. Kahit hindi ka pa miyembro, pag pumunta ka sa hospital, miyembro ka kaagad. And then outright eligibility. Saan natin kukunin ito pag i-privatize natin ito? And then how much will be the cost of for our people if we privatize this? And ang isa dito, sir, nakita ko pa, pag i-privatize natin, we people in the government, I'm very passionate. Ano mangyari sa atin sa gobyerno? Are we telling the people of the Philippines and the world that ang mga tao lang sa pribado ang marunong magtrabaho ng tama? Hindi marunong ang taga-gobyerno katulad natin? Wow, hindi maganda po yan, sir. It will send a wrong signal to our people that people in the government cannot be trusted. Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat, Attorney Dante Garan. It gives us confidence na yan po inyong pananaw at paninindigan. And of course, as we have said before, we will support you. Now, Attorney Garan, if you can stay sa Zoom, I would like to recognize the Honorable Barbers. Congressman Barbers is recognized.
Yan. Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Honorable Barbers, we can hear you.
Magandang umaga po sa lahat, Mr. Chairman. At yung aking tanong earlier was already asked by Congresswoman Stella Kimbo. No? Kasi gusto ko lamang pong sanang tanungin kay Yusek Sugay, in the report that they submitted to the President, did we include in your findings yung collusion between the private sector at saka yung mga taga-PhilHealth? Was that ever in that report?
If not in the report, Yusek Sugay, yung mga findings nyo siguro. Yes, go ahead, Yusek. Can you please reply?
Mr. Chair, just di ko lang humalala exactly, no, pero makikita niyo naman doon pag nakita when you talk about, for instance, yung IRM, or when you talk about yun nga yung mga issue ng mga case rates, lumalabas naman ho doon, nandun yung collusion na yon. But was it specifically spelled out doon sa report? As far as I know, hindi naman ho ganun ka-specific, no. But makikita niyo po with the specific issues that were raised or which were tackled doon sa report, yung the matter of collusion. Ano ho yun? It underpins yung mga issues ho na yun.
Kong Barbers?
I'm sure na hindi pwedeng makatakas yung collusive behavior o yung collusion sa mga mata ng DOJ, because I am certain that kahit nga tayo, madaling makita yun na hindi magiging successful yung sinasabi nating korupsyon kung walang collusion between the PhilHealth at saka yung private sector. And that is what interests me, Mr. Chair. Kung ito bang portion na ito ay naisama dun sa report submitted to the President. Kasi kung ganon, DOJ is recommending the filing of administrative and criminal charge against the PhilHealth officials. I wanted to know also if they also recommend the filing of cases against those in the private sector. Kagaya for instance yung mga na-identify na in collusion with the PhilHealth officials. Meron bang ganon kayong recommendation na Yusek?
Yusek Sugay?
Mr. Chair, Congressman Barbers, papunta ho tayo dyan. Meron ho talagang madadamay yan. Invariably, madadamay talaga yung may mga private individuals or private entities. Kasama ho talaga yan. No?
Okay.
And in fact, meron na nga ho tayong mga paulit-ulit na pinag-uusapan na involve yung mga ospital, yung mga doktor. Papunta ho tayo dyan. And in fact, as we go along, as I was saying earlier, as we go deeper into yung mga transaction, lalo na pagdating sa regions, dyan ho lalabas talaga yan. So, Kasama ho ba yan sa report specifically? Pag binasa nyo ho yung report, makikita nyo, it really underpins it. Kasi yung collusion between yung Philhealth tsaka yung private hospitals, practitioners, yung mga ating professionals, nandun ho talaga lahat yan. And invariably, madadamay ho talaga sila dyan kasi hindi naman mangyayari to kadalasan, hindi sila kasama. Yung ating mga doktor, yung mga hospital. So ganun po.
Yun lang kasi we wanted to make sure I'm quite impressed Yusek, Mr. Chairman, sa bilis nung report na ginawa ng DOJ, no, while the House and the Senate is still having their own investigation. Immediately DOJ came up and submitted a report to the President. Now my next question, doon po ba sa report nyo, Yusek, ng DOJ submitted to the President, did you consider the findings, of the Senate and the Congress, the lower house, in the investigation of Philhealth?
Yung sa House po, wala pa ho yung report no? Pero yung sa Senate po, yun, kasama yung binasa namin ng gusto yun. Kasama yung mga findings ng Senate. We took that into account when we were preparing po that report.
Congressman Barbers, if you recall, nagkaroon po tayo ng meeting with Yusek Sugay as part of the TWG preparation. Pero yung submission po natin, hindi pa ho natin officially naisagawa. This will be submitted next week. But in fact, Yusek Sugay was also aware of yung po mga kaso na ipinipila natin. And nandito rin po doon sa mga binanggit niyang kaso, Congressman Barbers.
Well, yun nga, no, Mr. Chairman, kaya nga ulitin ko, I was impressed with the immediate submission of the report to the President, considering only that some points that they raised in this report were taken from the investigation in the Senate. But Yusek Sugay, I modesty aside, I think the investigation that the House is doing is more comprehensive, so to speak. In fact, marami kaming issues that we raised. Hindi lang kami nag-focus dun sa IRM, dun sa case rate, dun sa upcasing. Marami pang other issues. Kaya nga, I'm glad when I read in the papers that continuing yung inyong investigation, meaning you will still have a lot of reading that you can do with respect to the reports that will be submitted by our committee in the House para ma-consider yon in your submission of report to the President. Am I correct to assume that, Yusek?
Yusek Sugay?
Mr. Chair, actually, sasabihin ko nga ho sana earlier, kung yung report nga ho na hindi pa yata na-turn over sa amin, hindi pa yata finalized. But kung kamukha ho na pag-usapan natin sa meeting noon kung ano ho yung gusto ninyong i-turn over sa amin, whether by way of yung mga specific complaints or in this case yung report, kasi nga ho, naalala ko yung napag-usapan natin, marami naman ho talaga kayong natingnan na issues, no? Hindi lang yung IRM, not just the big ticket items, pati yung talagang mga detalye nandoon na pag-usapan natin. And for purposes of determining which particular cases or which further complaints need to be pursued against Philhealth officials and even the healthcare institutions, the erring healthcare institutions and healthcare professionals, makakatulong po yung report ninyo. So in that respect, we will take into consideration po yung report ninyo and kami hinihintay namin, we welcome it.
Okay, salamat Yusek. Balikan ko ulit yung sinabi kanina, yung collusive behavior. No? Maganda yung point na ni-raise ni Congresswoman Kimbo na yung Department of Health Secretary, who is the chairman of the board, must do a little bit more, no? Hindi pwede yung papabayaan lang niya, no? Kagaya nga niyang usapin tungkol sa nangyayari ngayon, ang kanyang laging statement ni Secretary Duque ay I haven't attended the meeting of the board or I was not a signatory to that, etc., etc. So this clearly is an evasion of responsibility of being the chairman of the board. And the question raised by Congresswoman Kimbo kanina, kung ano ba on the point of view of the lawyers like you, yung hindi paggawa ng, hindi po ba non-feasance yung action na yun na ginawa ng Secretary of Health where he will always also be administratively liable. Tama ba yan, Yusek?
Mr. Chair, pag pag-aaralan ho namin yan, totoo ho yun, kung titignan nyo ho talaga, syempre, paano ho ba, how was PhilHealth managed all these years, di ba? We look into that. We've been looking into it, lalo na with regard to, kami, balikan ko lang, kunyari, yung pinag-uusapan natin yung IRM for instance. So far, nakikita namin, tama naman yung policy, no? Tama yung rules. Maybe it was in the implementation, ano? And I think that's a matter for the executive officers, no? Tama ba yung policy with regard to that, which is really kung ano yun yung papel ho ng board, di ho ba? Yun ang papel ng the chairman, no? Policy setting yung board, no? Magkaiba ho yun dun sa implementation. Titignan ho natin, we need to look into it further. Do they have oversight functions with regard to this, yung implementation or yung ginagawa ng ating nung executive officers? Did they exercise yung oversight function properly, no? As the board, no? Not just as policy setting, also yung oversight. Did they do that? So yun ho, titingnan natin lahat yan at tinitingnan pa namin. And kung nakita nga namin that even during the implementation, baka wala silang ginawa, hindi sila gumalaw when they should have, by way of oversight, kung meron nga silang ganung function under the law creating yung PhilHealth, titingnan ho natin yan and we will see and we will determine if there should be corresponding liabilities with regard to this.
Well, isang interjection lang from the chair. You have to remember, Yusek Sugay, that since 2001, Dr. Duque has been a part of the board of PhilHealth for at least 12 years. Siya ang pinakamahabang serbisyo o papel sa PhilHealth sa past 20 years actually. He's the longest tenured person in PhilHealth besides the executive officers who are now SVPs. Kaya kung titingnan natin, Yusek Sugay, we really have to study the role of Secretary Duque here. Kasi lagi niya sinasabi wala siya responsibility. How can you be the chairman of the board and say you're not responsible for anything? That is not the behavior of a responsible person. Yung lagi mo sasabihin, wala ako dyan, hindi ako yan. Hindi pwede yun eh. Where does the buck stop? Sino ba ang responsible talaga? Lagi mo ba sasabihin, executive officers lang? O yung taong matagal na nandyan, na alam ang lahat ng kalokohan, pinapabayaan lang? I mean, by default, it's him. I don't see why people are even thinking of other things but the responsibility of Mr. Duque. That's all. This is my interjection. Go on, Congressman Barbers. Congressman Barbers, please proceed.
I was informed that the members of the board, including the chairman, are getting paid just for signing board resolutions or just attending. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
They get a per dime. Ay, ang remark ni Yusek Sugay, may per dime daw sa bawat board meeting.
Ayun nga eh. And then pagdating sa responsibility, wala nang pakialam. Pero sa per dime, I think they're receiving the per dime. There must be some records to show that they are receiving these per dimes. No? Every time the board comes up with a resolution. So having said that, Mr. Chair, alam ko naman na tinitingnan niya ng DOJ, no? Kasi nga yung sistema, according to the hearings that we had, we were informed na ang practice ay yung executive, yung execom will draft a resolution, draft the agenda, and then route it to the members of the board for their signature. Meaning, hindi pinag-uusapan. Baka nag-uusap lang dun yung execom or yung isang departamento. It is pretty obvious, Mr. Chair, na ganun yung nangyayari. For instance, no, yung role nung SVP for Legal, Yusek Sugay, I'm sure tiningnan nyo rin yan. Correct ba ako dyan?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sec-
Mr. Chair, we're looking into it.
Okay, so in the initial report that you submitted to the president, there was, I don't know, I believe there was no mention of the SVP for Legal in his administrative liability. Am I correct?
Tinitignan ho namin yan, hindi po pwede kasi kung titignan niyo siya doon sa organizational structure ng Philhealth, ang laki ho talaga ng coverage o ng scope ng kanyang functions eh. So hindi ho talaga pwedeng hindi tignan yung role ng SVP for Legal. In fact, yun lang nga hong role niya as a member of the Execom, ang laking bagay na. So nandun ho talaga yon. Kung hindi man specific dun sa report, makikita nyo ho yan, if you read the whole report, nandun yan, nandun ang papel niyan, malinaw yung papel niya. At hindi ho po pwedeng, makalusot.
So initially ho, ano hong inyong findings sa kanyang liability, Yusek?
Initially, for instance, with regard dito sa IRM, sa IT, lahat naman ito dumaan sa kanya eh. Lalo na particularly with regard to his membership sa Execom, no? Ang laking bagay ho nun. And also, with regard to all those cases na hindi na-file, yung mga ganon, yung mga complaints. So, meron ho talaga. Tinitingnan ho namin ito and we're preparing the necessary complaints against lang po pati ho yung ibang officers.
So, meaning in your initial report submitted to the President, wala pa hong mention tungkol sa.
As far as I know, hindi naman no specific. It's really
Yusek?
more a general liability ng mga officers po.
Yusek? Okay.
Yes, Kong Barbers.
Yes. In the opinion of Yusek Sugay, no, did the SVP for Legal inform you kung ano yung legal basis for passing an IRM or implementing the IRM? Meron ho bang legal basis yun?
Yusek Sugay?
Mr. Chair, Congressman Barber, sa amin nung pag-aaral, malino naman no yung basis ng IRM, ano. Meron namang previous issuances, no. So nandun naman yun, no. So meron naman. I think if I remember correctly, it was started after the 2013 Philhealth issuance po nung dating CEO, si Attorney Padilla. I think it started in 2014 if I'm not mistaken, nung Yolanda.
That's
Okay,
correct.
just to follow up on the points being raised by Congressman Barbers, sinasabi po ni Atty. Del Rosario, lahat ng findings at report ninyo na sinabit kay Presidente, dahil po sa kanya. And therefore, kaya nga daw po siya, wala siyang kaso. And lahat po ng ginawa ninyo ay nanggaling po sa kanya. Is this true?
Hindi naman ho. Hindi ho totoo yun. Although he was one of the resource persons, one of the persons we invited to speak before the task force, kung ano ho yung well, at least his side of what happened sa Philhealth and particularly within the scope of yung office niya. Marami naman hong naging sources yung report na yon, hindi lang naman siya, no.
So
And
hindi
in
ho
fact,
totoo na siya yung naging parang cornerstone or basis ng ginawang report ng Department of Justice?
I categorically say na hindi po.
Thank you.
Kasi pala pa. And categorically, we cannot say right now that Attorney Rodolfo Del Rosario is absolved from any case that may be filed by DOJ, considering that you are still investigating.
Sa ngayon ho, it's really, well, sabi nga, 'di ba, in police parlance, 'di ba, everybody's a suspect. So walang Wala hong ganun. Walang specific na ito, ano na to, tatabi na natin ito. No, wala ho. At saka yung report na yan, ang dami ho namin sa task force na naimbitahan ng mga resource persons. Hindi lang naman ho siya. So,
Salamat po. Thank you, Yusek Sugay. Kong Barbers?
Yes, magaling talaga si Kong PD. Naunahan niya ako dun sa tanong na yun. Kasi that's the point that I'm driving at, Mr. Chairman. Kasi it would appear, no, in the statements that we see on the papers, in the news, it would appear to me, no, na parang may naabsuelto eh. So I just wanted to make that clear kay Yusek Yusuga. I asked several questions leading to that. And last point, Mr. Chair, tungkol dun kasi sa report na yon yung initial submission nila kay President Duterte tungkol dito sa Philhealth, which probably had the President decide to abolish and privatize itong Philhealth. Was there ever in your report, Yusek, that would somehow give a hint to the President that there is a necessity for the privatization or the abolition of the Philhealth?
And Yusek Sugay.
kung titingnan ho yung report, siguro hindi naman ho ganoon, ano. I would like to think that the task force did not want to give that impression, but it was really more for purposes of, I guess, recommending reforms with regard to the current structure of Philhealth. I don't think we went as far as say that, or we would not have gone as far as say na hindi na natin kailangan ng Philhealth, o hindi na natin kailangan, no. Hindi naman ho ganun. Maybe just reforms lang. Baka ho kasi doon na nakita niya sa report kung ano ho yung mga kung ano yung mga nangyayari sa loob, baka siguro nagkaroon siya ng sarili niyang conclusions yung presidente. Hindi ko ho alam. Ang hirap pong pangunahan kung ano ho ano. But sa akin, wala naman ho. It was really more, I would like to think the report really was advocating more for reforms dun sa PhilHealth, identifying the issues, and hopefully reading from those identification of issues besetting PhilHealth, that the president, as well as lalo na po kayo, yung Congress, ano, and the Senate, maybe can proceed to I don't know, take certain courses of action to with the end in view of reforming PhilHealth and the healthcare system po.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm satisfied with the Yusek Sugay's reply. I am just hoping that ito pong report na gagawin natin, isasubmit natin, which is perhaps more comprehensive than our counterparts in the Senate. Kasi ito, lahat po ng issue, siniksik po ito ni Chairman Mike. So, nakakapanghinayang kapag hindi po ito naisama sa inyong report that you will submit to the President. If reforms is indeed what we want to happen, first and foremost, the report must contain the filing of cases against erring officials, and including the private sector as well, plus the reform agenda that we want to institutionalize in the implementation of our healthcare program in the country via PhilHealth. So with that, maraming salamat, Yusek. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat, Congressman Barbers. Yusek Sugay, actually si Congressman Barbers ang nagpo-push dun sa Accenture issue, yung pong pagbabayad din dun sa nawalang pondo, dun sa the premiums being paid, and so on and so forth, as part of the TWD report. Short manifestation from Donald Barsaga.
Mr. Chairman, natutuwa ako at na-brought out ng ating kasama, si Congresswoman Kimbo, yung collusive behavior. At just a word of caution sa ating mga kababayan at sa ating kasama sa Kongreso, when it comes to collusive behavior, definitely we have to establish collusion. Collusion among the healthcare facilities, their employees or officers, including members of PhilHealth who participated in the collusive behavior. As a lawyer, alam naman natin that there will be no direct evidence insofar as collusion is concerned. Wala tayong makikitang dokumento o testimony that narinig ko at nag-usap sila, ito ang ating collusion. In collusion, it will be purely circumstantial evidence. And on the side of the Department of Justice, ayaw naman nila na magpapail sila ng asunto, dadalhin sa ombudsman, but due to lack of a prima facie case, dismiss. Magagalit naman sa kanila ang Pangulo, magagalit ang ating mga kababayan. And therefore, they have to carefully study that. Yun lamang ang ating caution at paalaala sa ating kababayan. Collusion is not easy to prove in as much as we have to rely on circumstantial evidence. But I think there are sufficient circumstances to lead to the conclusion that there was indeed collusive behavior in the payment in the Philhealth. Thank you very much for that short manifestation.
Thank you, Honorable Barsaga. And in that manifestation, yes, I think the committee would welcome, as you are part of the TWG, to include that in our report, the collective collusive behavior as stated, as proposed by yourself and of course the initially propounded by the Honorable Stella Kimbo. So maraming po salamat, and now we recognize the Honorable Kabatbat. Congressman Kabatbat is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My question is for Attorney Dante Geran. Are you there? Are you still there?
Attorney Dante Geran of Philhealth, magandang umaga po ulit.
Yes, sir. I'm still around, sir.
Thank you, Attorney Geran. This question is for my case study regarding Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita. Matanong ko lang po, nalaman niyo na po ba kung magkano ang natanggap ni Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita from Philhealth sa kayo hospital?
Honestly, Mr. Chair, Congressman Gabat, but I don't have the figure at the moment.
I see. Anyway, ang kausap ko naman po dyan si Attorney Barbado. But please confirm kung ang natanggap niya ay 260,730,766 from 2014 to 2018. Can you please check?
Come again, sir. 267?
260,730,766. Since 2014 to 2018. For 4 years lang. 4 years.
Got it, sir.
And can you please confirm, may prepare pong report. Anyway, natanggap ko po. Sa top 10 sa buong bansa na nakatanggap sa Philhealth ay number 3 po si Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita. Please also confirm that with your records. And
yes, sir.
Doon po sa 10 yon, ang lumalabas sa MIDAS report na involved sa Philhealth scam ay si Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita. So pang number 3 siya, hindi naman po ibig sabihin marami kayong natanggap sa Philhealth may kinalaman na kayo sa Philhealth scam. Doon po sa 10 yon. Pero siya ang lumalabas lang na involved sa Philhealth scam based on MIDAS report. Please also confirm that with your records, Attorney Geran.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So kasi lumalabas po sa report na nasa akin, Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita is the biggest fish involved in Philhealth scam for healthcare professionals. And the reason why I said that is also for you, Sugay, to hear that if we are going to use collective collusive behavior as basis for prosecuting those involved, whether it be government official na nasa Philhealth or private official, private practitioners, we can start with Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita because he is apparently the biggest fish there is in the sea. And kung ano man yung template na gagamitin natin in prosecuting Dr. Mark Dennis Menguita will equally apply to all those involved, ng mga doktor, ng mga ospital, Because one of the hospitals na pinagtatrabuhan ni Dr. Mark Dennis Mengita, maliit lang na hospital yon, but managed to get 1.2 billion. Pacheck po yung St. Louis Hospital sa South Cotabato. Thank you, Attorney Geran. Please just confirm kung ito pong mga data na ibigay sa akin ng ni Attorney Barbado from Fact Finding and Investigation Division ng Philhealth ay totoo. So, my next question, Mr. Chair, para lang po kay Yusek Sugay.
Go ahead.
I have received reports that Dr. Mark Dennis Mengita owns a lot of properties in Region 12. May mga hotels siya, farms, pharmacies, businesses, and he even intended to put up his own hospital, yung Ala River. What can we do about these properties? Kasi kung napansin niyo po yung mga committee hearings before, nagpunta ang Philhealth dun sa Region 12 and randomly selected cases of Dr. Mark Dennis Mengita. Nasa, I think, mga 31, 33 cases. Lumalabas, 100% of those randomly selected cases ay fraudulent and upcasing. So dito sa 260 million, mga nasa 90 to 100% dito ang fake. If we are, hindi ako statistician, no? Pero lumalabas na malamang sa malamang, he committed plunder. And he also committed violation of anti-money laundering law when he was able to put up these businesses from the proceeds of the 260 million that he got from PhilHealth. Malaman ko lang ano po ba ang pwede nating maikaso, magawa ng DOJ para ma-recover itong mga properties na to at makasuhan siya ng plunder, pati na yung mga involved na nag-validate ng claims niya sa PhilHealth.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, initially tama ho yung sinabi ni Congressman Kabatbat. Maganda ho yun that we can actually use it as a template in fact, isa sa mga nakausap namin ito to si Dr. Mengita may mga issue. I think yung isang hearing po natin he was present nakausap po ng committee yan. So tama ho yun, titingnan natin yan sa template kasi talagang malaki yung kaso niya Now and we will pursue that, we will look into that and maybe we can use yung kung ano yung complaint sa kanya, yung template nga to look into and to file cases against other healthcare professionals, erring healthcare professionals. Now, pagdating ho dyan sa mga properties niya, kailangan pa ho talagang patignan ng mas malalim yan. Pero normally, kasama ho yan pag finailan ng kaso, lalo na if it's anti-graft, RA 3019 or even plunder, kung meron ho kaming nakitang kakutsaba niya or he colluded with a certain officials or officers of PhilHealth, kasama naman ho yan may recovery of yung ill-gotten assets. Kasama yun sa mga kaso ko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Yusek Sugay. Last question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Anong protection po ang binibigay natin sa investigators natin? Dahil kung nasubaybayan nyo rin yung hearings last time, may mga nangyari ng ambush, pagpatay dahil sa pag-iimbestiga at pagsasampa ng kaso kay Dr. Mark Dennis Mengita. So baka naman ma-intimidate, matakot yung mga mag-iimbestiga nito. Kasi may mga nakakarating din sa aking reports na kahit yung kaso niya sa PRC, natatakot yung mga commissioner na mag-decide against him, lalo na nung nabalitaan yung magpag-aambush. Meron po ba tayong measures that we will implement to secure the safety of our investigators?
We will look into it po, Mr. Chair, Congressman Kabatbat. Kasama naman ho natin ng NBI dito sa task force. So we will look into those concerns. And yun lang ho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Yusek Sugay.
Thank you. The Honorable Basaga was actually asking about your safety. He's concerned about your personal security.
I think, Mr. Chair, he should be asking for the safety of those who want to kill me.
As proven.
Laban tayo dyan.
As history has proven. So with that, we now go back. The Honorable Kimbo, gusto niyo pong magtanong ulit? Honorable Kimbo?
Yes po, Mr.
Go
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually po, it's just a short manifestation kasi nabanggit po kanina yung privatization, whether it's an appropriate recommendation. So gusto ko lang po mag-manifest po na when we talk about privatization, pagdating sa Philhealth, I think we have to be clear that the National Health Insurance Program is a separate entity from the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. So magkaiba po yun. There's a program, which is a social health insurance program, and the other is the vehicle or the one that implements the program. So when we say privatize PhilHealth, we're talking about privatizing the corporation. So hindi ibig sabihin po niyan that if for example, the president directs the privatization of PhilHealth, it doesn't mean that government is precluded from subsidizing the premiums of our indigent households. So in other words, pwede pa rin na patuloy na sponsor ng government ang indigent households. In other words, pwede pa rin i-charge ng PhilHealth ang government for the premiums of our indigent households. Pwede pa rin po yun. So in other words, privatization as applied to the PhilHealth Corporation does not preclude the NHIP from functioning as it is functioning today. So yun lang po sana ang gusto kong ma-manifest. And several weeks ago po, I filed a bill which is called the Social Health Insurance Crisis Act. So dito po, nabanggit ko na may provision po doon which provides the President the authority to reorganize the PhilHealth, including privatizing PhilHealth in its entirety or portions thereof. In other words, when we talk about privatizing, it also includes the possibility of outsourcing from the private sector certain operating segments of PhilHealth. At sa akin naman po, I think that's a reasonable thing to consider because mismo na rin si General Morales would always say, nung siya po ay nakaupo pa as CEO, na dapat it's about time to privatize yung IT. Kasi kung nahihirapan ang gobyerno mismo to provide IT services themselves, pwede naman, in fact, Microsoft nga ang kanyang laging binibigay na example. So yun po, yun lang pong paglilinaw sana ang gusto kong sabihin po. So when we talk about privatization, I think that's a very broad concept. So yun pong importante lang po doon is it does not preclude government from continuing to subsidize our indigent households po. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kimbo. Maraming salamat. In fact, I would think, depende po sa Pangulo and based on the recommendations of DOJ and also, of course, the study being conducted by Attorney Gran, pwede naman din may levels of privatization kung ano naman gagawin nila. So tingnan po nila, hindi po natin pangungunahan si Attorney Gran tungkol dito. So, Honorable Barsaga.
Maraming salamat, Chairman. I would address this question kay Attorney Giran, our President sa PhilHealth. Marami sa ating mga kababayan ang nangangamba na baka kung sila ay ma-hospital sa ngayon or next year, wala nang pambayad ang PhilHealth sa public or sa private hospital. So I think kailangang malaman natin ano ba ang actual financial condition ng PhilHealth as of now. We are deliberating on the budget and we want to know kung ano talaga ang actual financial position ng PhilHealth so that we can make the necessary recommendation once the budget has been subjected to final approval.
Attorney Gran. Unmute po, Attorney Gran. Okay. Nakamute pa rin po? Nakamute pa rin po, Attorney Gran. Yan. Go ahead po.
Mr. Chair and a very good Congressman Barsaga, I don't have the complete statements of rather the financial statements here, but I have here figures, just full figure. in our projected income for 2019 was 146.4 billion coming from the GAA, support government, which is 67.3 billion, and from the contributors of 79.1 billion. For 2020, the income, projected income is 150, and coming from the GAA is 71, and from the contributors 79 billions. For 2021, the projected income is 158 billion, and this will come from the GAA, which we are now tackling. That is 71 point something billions, and coming from the contributors 87 billion. Now, the projected benefits, meaning the benefits that we are supposed to give, no, is something like per our actuarial is 254 billions. So from here, there is some kind of shortfall. So saan natin kukunin kung may shortfall ito, sir? Possibly, meron tayong investment, pero that is reserved. And that's the reason why we ask for more.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President, for that information.
Thank you, sir.
Napag-usapan natin yung current expected income for the year 2020, which is 115 billion, 71 billion coming from the GAA, and 89 billion coming from the direct contributors. We know for a fact that there was pandemic. At doon sa mga direct contributors, as of now, magkano na ba ang nakolekta ng Philhealth, so that we will know kung ano ang shortfall for the expected income for the current year.
I have, again, Mr. Chair, we have a figure here given by our finance manager. The expected income from contribution as of August, I think, is 79 billion. So we have still September, October, November, December, 4 months to go for the current year. But our projected benefits to be paid is something like 187 billion. So again, I will be having a shortfall. Hindi pa po kasama dyan, Mr. Congressman, ang para sa COVID na expected or projected to be 50 billions.
Mr. Chairman, isang ano.
Sige.
Go ahead.
Mr. Geran, meron ba kayong ibang aktuarya na pwedeng konsultahin? Kasi the figures that we're getting, I think, are outlandish. Parang hindi ho tama yung narinig namin na figures. Kasi kagaya niyan, sa computation nga ni Congresswoman Kimbo ng COVID, maximum 5 billion. Sinasabi ngayon na aktuarya nyo, 50 billion. That's 10 times more. Ano sana, no? Kung pwede ho na, number one, President Geran, sana magkaroon tayo ng financial at management audit. Pangalawa, sana magkaroon tayo ng consultant na actuarya, baka yung actuarial society, i-involve na natin dito para tulungan po ang Philhealth. Kasi sa ngayon, parang we do not find her computations to be credible. Sana ho, ma-validate lang ito para magkaroon tayo ng second opinion, because that will set us into panic mode. The same way that she said na hindi na viable ang Philhealth in any actuarial sense. Eh sa experience natin ngayong COVID time, pwedeng may konting cost ng COVID, Pero bumaba naman ang ibang sakit sa Pilipinas kasi nga mas malinis ang tao, mas kaunti nagkakasakit. Kaya parang di lumalabas ang tao. We don't find it very credible. Sana po meron tayong consultant na kunin na President Giran, no? Para ma-check, tsaka magpa-audit po tayo ng financial, tsaka management para makita nyo rin ang ibang perspective. Kasi kung dyan lang po kayo makikinig sa mga paligid nyo, na yung mismong nagka-problema ang Philhealth, baka wala na ho tayo puntahan, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Congressman Remulla. It's a very good suggestion and advice, and we will consider that in the next board meeting. Thank you.
Attorney Giran,
Honorable Barsaga.
as of now, magkano ba ang outstanding payables ng PhilHealth sa mga healthcare facilities?
I'm very sorry for that, Mr. Congressman. I don't have the figure at the moment.
But you are expecting that the total payouts for the year 2020 would be approximately how much?
To 237 billions, including the 50 billions for COVID.
So
Exclusive.
237 billion against the expected income of,
150 billions.
so there will be a difference of 100, more than 100 billion?
87 billions, the shortfall, Mr. Congressman.
87 billion. Kasi ang maging problema dito sa mga private hospitals, and this is the experience of our countrymate, sa private hospital, sasabihin ng private hospital, yan namang PhilHealth, hindi nakakabayad sa amin. At usually, ang ginagawa nila, ginadyakap na nila ang expenses, hospitalization, to cover up for the delayed payment of PhilHealth. At yan ang nakakatakot. Pangalawa, kung ganyan kalaki ang shortfall, ano naman ang remedyong balak niyong gawin para mabayaran yung pagkakautang natin sa healthcare institutions? And we are talking about the current year.
Mr. Chairman, we will go for what we call aging of accounts. We will pay first those early liabilities, and then we will make some kind of installment, maybe, with some of those coming later.
What about for the year 2021? You also expect that there will be a deficit as compared to the expected income as against the expected expenses for payout?
Mr. Chair, per our actuarial, there is, because the expected income for as provided to me by Mr. Renet Lamsiaco was only 158 billions, but the projected benefit that we are supposed to pay is something like about 244 billions.
In the spirit of transparency, may we know how much is the reserve funds of PhilHealth?
Come again, Mr.
Reserve funds. Magkano ang reserve funds as of now ng PhilHealth?
Mr. Chair, I'm very sorry to I don't have the figure at the moment. Maybe we can give the figure next time around.
Opo. Attorney Gan, mabilis lang po na pagsunod doon sa tanong ni Honorable Barsaga. Ito po yung minessage din ni Congressman Stella Kimbo. Magkano po ang cash ngayon ng PhilHealth? Cash balance. Alam niyo po ba? Alam po ba natin?
I will look into I'll look into my notes, Mr. Chair.
Para lang ho, tinitingnan nyo, no? Pagkaklara doon sa mga Yung mga binanggit lang po, no, meron tayong projected income. May projected payables tayo. Based on this, ang nakikita natin is 87 billion ang deficit. At yun ang sinasabi mo, Honorable Rimulya, na mukhang masyadong malaki yung mga payables, yung mga
Yes,
projection.
Mr. President, yung sinasabi yung payables, does that include all the past due and the current billings o current lang yan? Kasi dapat malinaw po yan eh. Kung yan po ay past due billings by year, meron ba kayong figures? Kung gaano ano yung aging po ng accounts na yan? How old these payables are? And then number 3, meron ba ho tayong audit? Kung gaano ho katotoo ito mga binibill sa atin, baka mamaya pinatungan na ho ng pinatungan yan. Do we have any figures on this, Mr. President, Attorney Giran?
Mr. Chair, I'm very sorry again. I'm not ready to give the figure. The figure is with the SBP Nerissa Santiago.
Okay, Ms. Santiago, nandiyan po kayo? Good afternoon po. Ms. Senior Vice President Nerissa Santiago, the Actuarial of Philhealth. Gandang hapon po.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Opo. Ma'am, ulitin lang po natin yung mga figures na pinag-uusapan. Ma'am, pwede nyo bang iulitin yung financials, ang mga projection nyo for the income, yung mga benefit claim payments, and payables?
Opo. Ito po. Yung pong income for 2020 projected po, that's about 148 for 2020. Ngayon po, yung para po sa benefits for 2020, iba-iba po kasing scenarios ang... Yes, sir.
Yeah, yung income mo is 148. Yung pong contribution ng national government?
71 po for 2020.
So, on top of the collections of premium?
Kasama na po sa 148 yung 71 billion.
Okay, sige po. Go ahead.
Opo. Tapos
Ms. Santiago? Yusek Sugay. Yusek Sugay tuloy. Sorry. Ms. Santiago?
Is Mr. Lim Siaco around?
Comsec, is Mr. Limsiaco with us? Mr. Limsiaco, baka pwede ho kayong sumagot dito dahil masama signal ni Ms. Santiago.
Yes, sir. Magandang tanghali po, sir.
Sige. Can you please again orient us with the current collection and also expenses of Philhealth?
Yes, sir. As of July, sir, of 2020, the net income, premium income contribution of PhilHealth ay nasa 87 billion and benefit claims expenses ay nasa 90.8 billion, Your Honor. And the gross loss ay 3.8 billion, Your Honor. And
Mr. DeChampo. Okay, ang tanong po kasi no for For 2020, uh, for 2020, expected income ninyo, 148 billion.
Yes, sir. 148, 149, or 150 billion, sir.
Oh, okay, sige. 150 billion. Magkano expenses?
Ang expenses, sir, projection ng ating actuary ay nasa 184 billion, sir. And then ang ating board ay nagdagdag ng 3 billion, so 187. And ang may another estimate pa si Ma'am Nairi na nasa 50 billion for the COVID. Yun po yung figure, sir.
50 billion, okay. O sige, 150 ang ating total income.
Yes, sir.
Ang tinitingnan yung benefit claim payments is 187.
Yes, sir. 187.
Tapos meron ka pang baka dumagdag pa yung 50 billion from COVID?
Yes, sir. Yan ang estimate po ng ating actuary.
Oh, yan yung kini-question na natin from day one. Honorable Kimbo, gusto kang interject? Go ahead.
Can you hear me po?
Yes, go ahead.
So Mr. Chair, sinabit kasi sa akin yung actuarial projections. So tama po yun, may projected deficit sila ng 86 billion. So on one hand, may budget request sila na 71 billion from the government. But on the other hand naman, they project ang pagkalugi nila next year ay 86 billion. At ang pagtitingnan po natin, no, dalawa po ang dahilan kung bakit may projected deficit. One po is napakababa po ng kanilang expected collection rate. So sa individually paying program, ang inaasahan lang nilang makollect next year is 5% of the collectibles. So ngayon pa lang po, Mr. Chair, inaasahan na nilang mag-fail in terms of collecting premiums. And I'm not talking about collecting premiums from the indigent, hindi po. Kasi yung para sa mahihirap po, sagot yun ng gobyerno. Ang tinitingnan po natin dito is collecting from, let's say, halimbawa po, professionals, like lawyers po, halimbawa, who are self-employed. Kasama po yan sa individually paying program. So, 5% lang ang kanilang expected collection rate. And number two po, meron silang expected payout sa isang bagong benefit package na i-introduce nila next year, which is the Consulta package. And they expect to pay 68 billion pesos or 625 pesos for every single Filipino. So, yan ang dahilan po, ang two big reasons sa aking pag-analyze ng kanilang actuarial projections kung bakit sila nag-e-expect ng malaking pagkalugi. So, two questions. Number one is, bakit yun pa lang? Tinamad na tayong mangolekta, di ba? Hindi ba kasama po yan sa mandato ng Philhealth, Mr. Chair? They are an insurance program. They're supposed to collect from whom they have to collect. And it's clear in the law kung sino ba dapat ang kokolektahan. And number two po, before Philhealth is supposed to introduce new packages, dapat po may actuarial, may actuarial study. So, bakit ka mag-i-introduce ng isang insurance package na A, ikalulugi mo, and B, kaya ba talagang ma-implement yan? Because that package provides consultations. In other words po, check-ups for every Filipino. Kino-compute ko po kasi 46,000 lang po ang accredited doctors ng Philhealth. And kino-compute ko, kahit na i-require mo ang every single accredited Philhealth doctor to, let's say, allot 2 to 3 hours every day for free checkups for all Filipinos, with 22 days per month at 46,000 doctors, they can only service 24 million Filipinos. So bakit nila inaasahan na gumastos ka agad ng 68 billion? So yun ang katanungan. Bakit nila sinasabi, why are they raising alarm bells? Bakit nila sinasabi na malulugi sila? I think, Mr. Chair, that's their way of trying to ask for more money from government. So yun po ang aking, that's why sorry po, I had to make this interjection kasi po I am really very concerned po. And as a result of this, I actually wrote a memo po kay Speaker and I copy furnished po Attorney Geran and President Duque, Secretary Duque po on this.
Thank you, Honorable Kimbo. Just
tanungin ko na siya,
a quick interjection lang, no? Alam nyo, gumawa ako ng bill. In fact, pupunta na sa plenary. Yung free annual checkup. Based on our assessment, alam ko na yung consulta package, they were pushing for that. Pero based on our assessment, the cost will only be about 5 billion. Yung libreng check-up na yon, based on the existing packages. Ngayon, yung COVID, sabi nga ni Congressman Boying, 3.5, pero tinodo na natin sa 5 billion. Pero ang projection la 50 billion. Bakit ganon? Honorable Remulla.
Tanongin ko lang si Congresswoman Kimbo, would you agree with me na kailangan natin ng ibang actuarial opinion dito? Kasi parang bloated lahat ng figures na pinapadala sa atin ng kanilang actuary. Kagaya niyan, paggastos, 50 billion ng COVID. Sa projection mo, Congresswoman Kimbo, 5 billion lang eh. Ano ba talaga? What are we hearing from the actuary? Tama ba that we need another opinion or another viewpoint from probably the Actuarial Society of the Philippines to know the truth? Kasi kung ito lang aasahan natin, talagang lulubog ang Philhealth. Congresswoman Kimbo?
Tama po, Kong Boying. I fully agree with you. In fact, yan po yung isang recommendation ko po doon sa memo na pinadala ko kay Speaker. Sabi ko, kailangan na talaga ng third-party audit. And in fact, lumabas naman po ito, Kong Boying, doon sa ating hearings na ginawa in the last months, di ba? They committed to having a third-party audit of their actuarial projections. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nila binibigay yan. And despite our raising of concerns, gumawa ulit sila ng ganitong klaseng actuarial projections for 2021. Kaya talagang, I'm really, nababahala talaga ako. So kailangan natin ng audit. And number 2 po, sure naman po ako na yung Actuarial Society ay willing. Alam niyo po, hindi naman po ako actuary. Kaya lang po, marunong lang po akong magbasa ng spreadsheet at nakita ko kaagad na may dalawa na talagang malaking problema. Yung tinamad ng mangolekta, and number 2 po is yung consulta package po is really overestimated and it's poorly designed. Kasi po, theoretically, tama po yung sinasabi ni Chairman Mike na yung pag-provide po ng free consultation shouldn't be through Philhealth because that's not insurable. So dapat po, ang magbabayad po niyan is the DOH and the LGUs. And during our budget briefing, inamin po ni Yusek Villaverde na may double counting na nagaganap because some of the budget of DOH ay nakalaan na po for check-ups. Kaya nakakapagtaka na PhilHealth will set aside a substantial amount, 68 billion pesos. So mangyayari po dyan, magiging stranded po ang funds na yan. There is no way that they can spend that amount for purposes of check-ups. So yun ang tinatanong ko, parang bakit? Is this their way of taking money from government?
How about, Congresswoman Kimbo, how about the 50 billion for COVID?
So, sa kanilang, definitely po hindi tayo aabot doon. In fact, yung estimate ko po na 3.3 billion is based on the projected number of COVID cases ng PhilHealth. They said 209,000. Of course, today, lumagpas na tayo ng 209,000. Pero kahit sabihin po natin na maging 1 million pa yan, hindi aabot po ng 50 billion yan. Okay, that's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Kimbo. Honorable Attorney Geran, yung pong sinabit ninyo na actuarial study, no, na ginawa na binigay nyo kay Congressman Kimbo, can you please give the committee a copy of that? Attorney Geran?
Nakamute, Attorney Geran, nakamute.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We commit to give the committee a copy of that proposal.
Maraming po salamat. And before we continue, Honorable Kimbo, if you can also submit your observations on the actuarial study, because we will support you as a committee to your recommendations as a collective group. Kahit na hindi na po kayo, kami po kasama niyo dyan sa pagtutulak ninyo doon sa problema sa actuarial study. The Honorable Barsaga.
Well, napag-usapan natin yung pre-checkup. It is noble. But let me share my experience. I was the mayor of Dasmariñas from 2016 up to 2019. It so happens that we operate a public hospital. Kaya ang sabi ko sa mga city employees, magkakaroon tayo ng pre-checkup. Maganda niya, mayor. Pero ang problema, kung may makita kayong sakit sa amin, ano gagawin ng city government? So we have to provide the remedy. Kasi ang sabi niya, mayor, mas mabuti pa na hindi namin nalalaman ang aming sakit kaysa malaman namin pagkatapos kayo wala namang gagawin. And this is the problem with PhilHealth. Check-up will not be the end. Kailangan kung merong sakit, kailangan gamutin natin. Kung kailangan ipa-MRI, ipa-MRI natin. Kung kailangan ipa-CT scan, ipa-CT scan natin. Kung diabetic, bigyan natin ng gamot. And possibly, kung kinakailangan ang dialysis, bigyan natin ng dialysis treatment. Mere check-up alone will not be good for our people. Kinakailangan it must be a complete package at dito na naman natin nakikita hindi mabuting pinag-aaralan ng PhilHealth ang kanilang mga programa. Well, anyway, yun lamang reserve funds. Number one, yung reserve funds hindi natin pwedeng gamitin. Ano ang purpose ng reserve funds? Address to the President, Attorney Dante Gran. I know that you are bago ka pa lamang dyan, pero ang sabi mo, meron kayong reserve funds, pero hindi pwedeng gamitin in case of shortfall. What is the purpose of the reserve funds ng PhilHealth, which are actually invested to various shares of stocks of different corporations in the Philippines, based on the COA report?
Mr. Chair, I will let SVP Santiago answer the question. Ma'am Neri, please.
SBP Neri? Ayan, go
yes
ahead.
po.
Go ahead.
Sorry po, I got cut off kanina po. Yung reserve fund po is the purpose for which is pagka ganito nga pong merong pandemic, merong mga calamities, ito po yung pwede nating pangbayad pagka po nagkakaroon tayo ng shortfall sa ating pondo, sa ating mga collection. So kaya po ang level po talaga na in-expect po sa ang inire-recommend namin is at least 1 year's program expenditure, which includes benefit payout at saka po yung expenses. So ito po, para po sa mga ganitong emergencies at saka yung mga calamities po.
Okay.
Over.
So sa madaling sabi, yung reserve funds pwedeng gamitin sa COVID.
Yes po. Bali po,
Okay.
basta nagkaroon ng shortfall. Yes po.
Okay. So it can be used for COVID cases for the year 2021.
Correct po. Opo.
Okay.
Even for 2020 po.
And based on the information given to me by Yusek Sugay, ang sabi nyo, yung COVID pwede direct or indirect cost ng COVID. And that is why
Correct po.
justify nyo ang pagbibigay sa mga dialysis center. Yes or no?
Opo, tama po.
So sa madaling
Yes po.
sabi, based on your position, pwede natin gamitin yung reserve fund for any medical expense which might be directly or indirectly connected with COVID, even if the sickness is incidental.
Yes po. Opo.
Okay, so very clear tayo riyan. So to summarize, I will just be asking for the following documents. Number one, the outstanding payables as of December 31, 2019. You can immediately provide that. Will that be correct?
Yes po. Opo.
Okay. Second, the expected income for 2020 is specifying what would be coming from the government and what would be coming from the direct contributors. You can provide that.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yes po.
Second inquiry, in as much as we additional document, in as much as we are already third quarter of the current year, I will just be asking, what was the actual collection as of June 30, 2020? Okay?
Okay po, sir. Mr. Chair, yes
And
po.
also, the actual the expenses to be paid for ending June 30, 2020.
Yes po, Mr.
Okay?
Chair.
And the expected paid out for the year 2020 based on your projections.
Okay po, Mr. Chair.
Okay?
Yes po.
And also for the
Yes.
year 2021, what is your expected income? What is your expected payout? So that we will know kung ganong kalaki ang magiging deficit nyo. And finally, as mentioned by Congresswoman Kimbo, tama ba yung ang expected collection nyo lamang ay 5% o mas mababa as compared to the current year sa 2021?
Mr. Chair, I think Kong Kimbo is referring to the informal sector, which includes po itong mga individually paying. Opo.
Yung mga collections from the private sector, either from the professionals, either from the salaried employees, whether employed in the public or private sector, how much is your expected income from this group for 2021?
Sige, we can provide you po, sir.
Ay, hindi mo kayang sabihin ngayon?
87 billion po.
87 billion. What about
Opo, kasama na po
current year? For the current year, ano ang budget nyo sa collection?
Sa current year po, 100
for the contributions. Direct
from
contribution.
From the direct 77 billion po.
77 billion today for the year. And
For
next,
the year po, projected.
and for next year, 87. Ito bang
Yes po,
77 billion, will you be able to realize it in spite of the pandemic?
Opo, naka-incorporate na po dyan yung effect ng pandemic, ni Mr. Chair.
So, kayang-kaya nyo to. But next year, definitely, there will be an increase sapagkat operational na ang mga businesses. As compared ngayon, walang businesses, sarado starting March and even up to the present, kukunti ang negosyong tumatakbo. Kukunti may trabaho.
Yes po.
Okay.
Yes
So
po,
I
Mr.
want
Chair.
also those figures, including the expected payout, and more importantly, yung inyong reserve funds. Saan ba naka-investo? Magkano ang outstanding? Kailan ang maturity, etc. Because there was an adverse comment insofar as your investment in reserve funds are, as far as your investment in reserve funds is concerned, based on the COA audit.
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, specifying.
We can
How
give it
long
to you.
do
po.
you need? How much time do you need before you can submit that?
Today is we can submit po sa inyo latest Monday po siguro.
Latest Monday. Oh, ayun namin ng siguro. Siguraduhin mo na. Kasi
Sige po, apo. Monday po.
the report. And these are the things
Yes po.
we have to consider, not to mention that we are deliberating on the budget.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Monday po.
Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you po.
Barsaga.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
P. Santiago, last question. Yung cash balance nyo ngayon, magkano ho?
Cash balance kasama po ba yung yung mga investments or just the cash?
The cash itself. The cash. Liquid
Okay
cash.
po. ang ano po, based on dun sa August na initial draft pa lang po, we have about 7 billion in
7
cash.
billion. Okay.
Apo.
Yung nakapasok sa reserve fund po ninyo sa mga investments, magkano po yun?
Ang reserve fund po kasi natin is 109 billion. Ang investable po, kasama po yung mga nasa time deposit na short term, which is for
Yes.
the liquid investment, nasa 213, if I'm not mistaken.
213
200
billion.
plus po.
So 213 billion in time deposit, in investments, so on and so forth. And you have actually liquid cash of 7 billion.
Yes, Mr. Chair. 213, yes, tama.
30?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
30?
13. 213, sir. 213, sir.
Okay. So sige. At any rate, if there are no more questions, we would like to thank Philhealth President Attorney Dante Geran and the Senior Vice Presidents, Ms. Santiago, Mr. Limsiaco, and also, of course, our USEC Adrian Sugay of the Philhealth Task Force of the Department of Justice. Maraming po salamat sa inyo. By next week, we will coordinate at the same time to finish with our committee report. We will coordinate po muna with the Secretary General's office para ho maayos natin in the light of the budget discussions. But with that, I would like to thank the members of Congress who are here with us, Honorable Kabatbat, Honorable Remulla, of the committee, both of the Committee of Public Accounts and Committee on Good Government, and the Honorable Barsaga. At sa lahat po ng ating mga kasama sa Zoom, maraming pong salamat sa inyo. On the part of the Committee on Public Accounts, this hearing is suspended until further notice.
On behalf of the Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability, this meeting is suspended. Hindi, mag-meet tayo ng mga Wednesday.
Nakatakot si Santiago.
Sira ulo niyan eh.